Some have asserted that the changes we have witnessed with respect to language skills represent the natural evolution of language. Do you believe this is an accurate assertion and that academics are simply resisting this evolution?
As far as the evolution part of the question of language, I completely agree. We see how many new words are added to the dictionary every year. I don't think Destiny's Child and Beyonce would have ever dreamed that bootylicious would be in the dictionary when they came out with the song, but yes, it's in there. Y'all didn't know that, apparently. Y'all is in the dictionary, so make sure y'all spell it right whenever you're using it or saying it. The apostrophe goes in one place, not the other. So even with my students, week by week, they'll throw these words out or these abbreviations that I don't know. So I learn something new every day. And at least in my classroom, it's okay, because it's casual, it's get in there, answer some questions, it's a communication class, I want you to talk. So our discussion is a lot less formal, it's a lot more casual. I'd prefer you get your opinion out there and worry less about how it's said when it's a class discussion. Now, when it's your time to stand up and give a speech, the switch needs to flip, and it's a lot more professional. You put on an act, and you use a different type of language. I'm a completely different person lecturing than I am giving a presentation. Completely different. Even this is pretty casual for if I was going to give a presentation to an audience full of professionals or peers or the board of trustees or whoever it was. It's a different person, and it may be dry, but I've got to consider, like we've said down the road, who my audience is and what their expectations are. As far as the second part with academics resisting, I don't know if we're resisting, but I think our goal is to emphasize the time, place, and manner. What time are you using it, in what manner, and what place is it going down? Because you have to realize, again, it may not be understood, it may not be appropriate, and you may not know who's watching. I have students who friend me on Facebook. There's nothing there that's damaging to my reputation. I don't care if you want to be my friend on Facebook. But realize it posts everything on that main page as soon as I log in. So when you write something bashing other classes and put FML, I'm reading that. And you're my student right now and I see this. Or I'm doing this in my history class. Well, you know, Dr. Kumler's just 10 feet away. I'm going to go down and chat with her about what's going on. So realize you may be sending your message thinking just your friends and family are reading it. Oh yeah, I friended so-and-so at Grayson, and now they've seen it. And get you in some deep trouble. I mean, how many people and how many stories have we seen on the news where people get fired because of what they've posted on social media sites and what they've put up on Twitter? And it may just be venting, but you've got to realize there's a reason, again, the time and place to use it. So I don't think the academic world is resisting it, but I think it's important for us to emphasize when's the right time to use it and when's the right place. It's out there. We can't stop it. It's coming. It's going to get more intense, I think, as technology keeps growing and growing, and we get all these new editions of iPhones and iPads coming out. Because it's there. I mean, how many in this room have a smartphone? Just a quick show of hands. Yeah. How many of you text during class or play words with friends? We know what you're doing. Or tonight, yes, because we're boring you. We're sorry. So it's habit, and it's a fighting battle for us to try and keep your attention and keep you away from using this lingo in your papers and things like that. So it is a give and take, but I don't think we're completely resisting it, but emphasizing when the right time is to use it, and when's the time to flip that switch and become more professional in your writing and in your communication with others.
So I have to think about this idea here about the question about the changes that are being witnessed with respect to language representing the natural evolution of language. Absolutely, it should be. That's the way it works. There are all different types of registers for language. There's jargon, there's dialect, there's slang, there's academic, and knowing when to use it and when it's appropriate to use it, and knowing that your audience understands that, that's important. So texting is just another, area where we're evolving into that. This resistance, as far as academics, this is a different area. We have a standard. It's our job as instructors to hold that standard. I've seen one change in my entire life, a mechanical change in standard English, and that's it. and there's talk of maybe another one happening. Those things have been set a long time, and that's why it's a standard, so that we understand, we know this is a standard, this is what we aspire to, and that it's good communication. But does that mean we're, avoiding the other? Of course not. That is how things should happen. And what you said about the dictionary, I think is so important. A lot of times students will tell me, well, the dictionary is all about the rules and what's proper. It's like, oh no. No, the language is what came into place first. The dictionary is an indication of the language. It is a reflection of it. That's the way it should be. So just because you don't know everything in there doesn't mean, that's maybe not your specific language and the things that you're using, but that's the way it evolves, and that's why things are added to it. It's a reflection of the society and the things that are happening. So I think this question in terms of, yes, we see this evolution. I don't think necessarily we're opposed to it. I know I'm certainly not. But when it comes to writing, I'm dead serious about what needs to happen and what those rules are, and are we following those rules. And again, like I mentioned before, once you know the rules, then you can start, being creative with them and breaking them. And if you know the rules and you use them to your advantage, that's a whole different deal than not knowing what the rules are.
I guess I took this differently.
That's because you're in history.
Somebody has to maintain a voice of sanity.
Ouch.
When I think of evolution, I think that's what she gets for putting 4 women on a panel. When I think of evolution, I think of something that is positive and developing and enlarging and deepening and improving. And I have a hard time thinking about how we are, in some cases, butchering the language. What if we evolve to the place that what we see is just a string of letters, abbreviations for words, and there is something to be said for a well-turned phrase or the beauty of language. You can express yourself more deeply by your knowledge of the language and by vocabulary. I sometimes joke with my students and I say to them, part of the benefit package in the class is that I want to get you out of level 1, which is pretty much and I want to get you into the 2-syllable words. And so we have levels of vocabulary in there, 50-cent words, 75-cent words, and dollar words. And I want them up in the dollar level, see. But there's a certain beauty and a certain communication that comes across in finding the right word. And we're all not successful in doing that sometimes. But I think about some of the abbreviated languages or some of the things we've joked up here tonight about, like TTYL or LOL or whatever. What's the beauty there? So I don't know that's evolution. I would call it devolution. I think it's backwards. It's going backwards in terms of what I think the function of language should be in my non-languaged field. But there is something to be said for that, and that's part of what we try to get you to see is that the better your vocabulary is, the more you use it, the more you not only use it in writing, but you use it interacting with other people. There is a depth to that you're going to miss. There's a depth of living in that you're going to miss. See, I don't want my husband to run out the door if he's going to be gone for 3 weeks and say, LOL, or TTYL or whatever. That's not what I want from him. So I'm not sure what was meant by the question here. I think what academicians resist is not using the written language as appropriate given what the audience is or what the assignment is. So just a thought there about evolution.
I hope that I try to explain this right. I think of language, I'm at heart a writer, so of course I'm not in academics, but I would definitely say I'm old school and I write out my texts. I don't really like to use abbreviations, even though I know what they are. But I think also think of language, if you can relate it to math, you know, you really can't do algebra or geometry or trigonometry if you don't know basic adding and subtraction. And so I don't think you can relate to someone on shortcuts or your own sort of language that you've developed if you don't completely understand the foundations of language to begin with. So I do agree with Dr. Kumler some in that I think in a way, if we're not careful, language can devolve if we base our language entirely on taking shortcuts. But I do think that it can be positive if we use it, like Dr. McBee said, as just another type of language or type of communicating, just like you have casual, academic, professional, and just exactly when it's appropriate for whichever audience you're using. I also think that there is definitely, again, I don't know if it's in evolution, but I think it's just worth mentioning. I don't really know what point I'm trying to take away or want you guys to take away from it, but one thing that technology, obviously, I think that you understand is that it's really making us a global society and that it's easy to communicate in a split second with someone across the world. And so that's incredibly exciting. We're at a point in history that, you know, is unseen ever in relation to that. But again, it's important to have those communication skills because someone in Japan or someone in, Africa isn't going to have the same shortcuts you're going to have, and they're not going to have the same slang. They may learn it after a certain point, but you want to know the foundations of your language, whether it's English or whether it's theirs, to be able to communicate with them effectively. And as technology becomes even more important in our lives, it's going to be that much more important to understand that's how you have to work. You have to know those foundations first, and then build off of them in order to communicate with someone who may not be able to relate to you in your native language.